The blizzard tore across the prairie like a beast with teeth of ice. Snow buried the earth in waves so deep that roads vanished, fences disappeared, and hope froze solid in the hearts of those still breathing. At the edge of the empty grassland stood a collapsed homestead, its roof caved in and walls leaning at angles that defied reason. Inside that ruin, beneath splintered wood and drifts of snow that had blown through the gaps, a young woman lay motionless, her body curled tight against the cold. Emma Hartwell was dying. Her lips had turned blue, cracked and bloodless. Her fingers were so numb she could no longer feel them. The hunger inside her had stopped clawing days ago. Now it just sat there, a hollow ache that had become part of her. She had not eaten in nearly a week. Time meant nothing anymore. Each shallow breath felt like lifting a stone. Snow fell through the broken roof and landed on her face, melting against her skin before freezing again. She pulled the threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders, but it was useless. The cold had already claimed her from the inside out. Once she had been strong. Once she had worked this land with her father and helped neighbors through harsh seasons. Now even the wind seemed to avoid her, as if death had already marked her and nothing living wanted to come close. She forced her eyes open and looked toward the corner of the room. There, half buried in snow, sat a small leather satchel. Inside were her mother's letters, a silver comb, and a photograph of her family before sickness took them all. It was the only proof she had ever belonged anywhere. Just 2 months earlier, this homestead had been full of life. Her father's tools hung on the wall. Sacks of grain filled the larder. The stove burned warm every night. Then the fever came. It took her mother first, then her younger brother, then her father. Emma buried them herself in ground so frozen she had to light fires just to soften the earth enough to dig. When the last shovel of dirt fell, she stood alone in a world that had forgotten her. The neighbors came after that. Not to help. To take. They said the land was not hers anymore. They said a woman alone had no claim. When she refused to leave, they took everything anyway. The livestock, the food, the tools, even the wood stacked for winter. They left her with nothing but the collapsing house and a warning. If she was still here when they returned, they would remove her by force. Emma had tried to walk to the nearest town. She made it less than a mile before the storm hit. The wind knocked her down. The cold stole her strength. She crawled back to the homestead and collapsed inside, knowing she would never leave again. That was 4 days ago. Maybe 5. She had stopped counting. Her body had stopped shivering. That was a bad sign. She knew what that meant. The cold was winning. She closed her eyes and thought about her mother's voice. The way her father laughed. The sound of her brother playing in the summer grass. Those memories felt warmer than any fire. Maybe death would let her see them again. Maybe it would be kinder than this slow freezing. The wind howled outside, and Emma let herself drift toward the darkness. Then the door exploded inward. Snow and freezing air rushed into the room like a flood. Emma's eyes snapped open. Her heart hammered once, hard and painful. Through the blinding white, a massive shape filled the doorway. She thought it was the neighbors coming back to finish what they started. She tried to move, to crawl away, but her body would not obey. The figure stepped inside and slammed the door shut behind him. As her vision cleared, she saw him. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, wrapped in a heavy coat covered in snow. His face was hidden behind a thick beard frosted white with ice. He carried a rifle slung over one shoulder and a pack over the other. His eyes swept the ruined room and stopped on her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then he spoke, his voice deep and rough, like stone grinding against stone. Christ Almighty. He crossed the space in 3 long strides and dropped to one knee beside her. How long have you been here? Emma tried to answer, but her throat was too dry. No words came. He pulled off his glove and pressed his bare hand against her forehead. His touch burned like fire against her frozen skin. You're near gone, he said, more to himself than to her. He did not ask permission. He did not explain. He simply acted. He shrugged off his pack, pulled out a wool blanket, and wrapped it around her. Then he lifted her as though she weighed nothing. Emma's vision blurred. She felt herself pressed against his chest, felt the warmth of him seeping through the blanket. Stay awake, he ordered. You hear me? Stay awake. She tried to nod, but her head lolled against his shoulder. The last thing she remembered before darkness took her was the sound of his boots crunching through snow and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her ear. When Emma woke, she thought she had died and gone somewhere else. Warmth surrounded her. Real warmth, the kind she had forgotten existed. She lay beneath heavy blankets, and nearby, a fire crackled and popped in a stone hearth. The smell of wood smoke and something cooking filled the air. Her body ached everywhere, a deep bone-tired pain that felt almost good because it meant she was still alive. She turned her head slowly. The room was small but solid. Log walls, a wooden table, shelves lined with supplies, a rifle mounted above the door. This was not heaven. This was a cabin, and she had no idea how she had gotten here. "You're awake." The voice came from across the room. Emma turned and saw him, the man from the homestead. He sat in a chair near the fire, watching her with eyes that were gray and steady. Without the snow covering him, she could see him clearly now. He was older than she first thought, maybe 40. His face was weathered and hard, carved by years of wind and cold. His hands were scarred and rough. "Where am I?" she managed to whisper. "My cabin," he replied. "About 8 miles north of where I found you." 8 miles. In that storm. He had carried her 8 miles. Why? The question came out weak and confused. He stood and moved to the stove, ladling something from a pot into a wooden bowl. "Because leaving you there meant you'd die." He brought the bowl to her and set it on a small table beside the bed. "Drink this." Slowly, Emma pushed herself up, her arms shaking with the effort. The broth smelled like heaven. She took the bowl in trembling hands and sipped carefully. It was thin and simple, just water and dried meat and salt, but it tasted richer than anything she had ever known. Tears filled her eyes without warning. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once and returned to his chair. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Emma drank the broth in small sips, feeling warmth spread through her chest for the first time in days. "What's your name?" he asked finally. "Emma. Emma Hartwell." "Hartwell." He frowned. "You're John Hartwell's daughter." She looked up, surprised. "You knew my father?" "Met him once. 3 years back. He helped pull my wagon out of the mud during spring thaw." "Good man." Was Emma thought. Was a good man. "I'm Caleb Moss," the man continued. "I trap and trade out here. Live alone." He paused. "Mostly by choice." Emma set the empty bowl down. "The homestead. Gone," Caleb said bluntly. "Roof collapsed fully in the storm last night. Nothing left worth salvaging. Nothing left." The words should have hurt more, but Emma felt only numbness. Everything was already gone. The house was just the last piece. "I'm sorry," Caleb added, and the way he said it made her believe him. "For your loss." Emma pulled the blankets tighter around herself. "Why did you come there?" "To the homestead." "Checking old traplines," Caleb replied. "Saw smoke that wasn't smoke. Turned out to be snow blowing through the broken roof. Thought someone might be in trouble." He paused. Didn't expect to find someone half dead. Before Emma could respond, a sudden pounding shook the cabin door. Emma's heart seized. Caleb was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. "Get behind the bed," he said quietly. Emma scrambled to obey, her legs barely holding her. 3 loud bangs echoed through the cabin. "Moss! Open up!" a man's voice shouted. "We know you've got her." Emma recognized that voice. Garrett Wade, one of the men who had taken everything from her family's land. "There's no one here but me," Caleb called back, his voice calm but cold. "We followed your tracks from the Hartwell place," another voice yelled. "Hand her over. She's got debts to settle." "She's got nothing," Caleb replied. "And you're on my land. Leave." "We have legal claim to that homestead and everything on it," Garrett shouted. "That includes her." Caleb raised the rifle and cocked it. The sound echoed loud in the small cabin. "I said leave." Silence. Then muttering. Then footsteps crunching away through the snow. Emma waited, barely breathing, until the sounds faded completely. Caleb lowered the rifle but did not set it down. "They'll be back," he said. Emma sank onto the edge of the bed, her legs shaking. "I should go. I'm putting you in danger." Caleb turned and looked at her with an expression that was not unkind, but was absolutely unmovable. "Go where? You can barely stand. The storm's still raging outside. You wouldn't make it 100 yards. Then what do I do?" Emma asked, her voice breaking. "You stay here," Caleb said simply. "You eat. You rest. You get your strength back. Then we figure out what comes next." "Why would you help me?" The question came out desperate and small. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he set the rifle down and crossed his arms. 20 years ago, my wife and daughter got caught in a storm like this. I was out on a trap line, too far away to help. By the time I got home, they were gone. Frozen to death in our own barn, because I wasn't there. The words hung in the air like smoke. Emma's throat tightened. I'm sorry. So am I, Caleb said quietly. Every damn day. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the weight he carried behind those gray eyes. I can't bring them back. But I can make sure someone else doesn't die alone in the cold. Not if I can stop it. Emma did not know what to say, so she just nodded. Caleb turned back to the fire. You'll sleep in here tonight. I'll take the floor. Tomorrow, if the storm breaks, I'll see about getting you real food and proper clothes. And after that? Emma asked. Caleb glanced at her over his shoulder. After that, we see if you've got any fight left in you. Because those men will come back. And when they do, you'll need to decide who you want to be. The storm raged for 2 more days. During that time, Emma stayed inside the cabin, eating what Caleb provided and regaining strength bit by bit. He was not a talkative man, but he was steady. He kept the fire burning. He made sure she ate. He never asked for anything in return. On the 3rd morning, the wind finally stopped. The world outside fell silent, blanketed in white. Caleb stood at the window, looking out. Storm's done, he said. I'm going to check the traplines. I'll be back before dark. Emma stood near the fire, feeling stronger than she had in weeks. Let me come with you. Caleb turned, surprised. You're not ready. I'm standing, Emma replied. I'm walking. I'm not dead. Let me come. He studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Keep up. They walked through deep snow under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Caleb moved with the ease of someone who knew this land like his own heartbeat. Emma followed, struggling at first, but refusing to slow down. By midday, they reached the first trap. Empty. The second trap had been disturbed, the bait stolen. Wolves, Caleb muttered. Or men pretending to be. At the 3rd trap, they found something else. Tracks, fresh ones. Leading toward the cabin. Caleb's jaw tightened. We need to go back. Now. They moved quickly, but not quickly enough. As they crested the ridge above the cabin, Emma saw them. 4 men on horseback, waiting outside the door. Garrett Wade stood at the front, holding a piece of paper. That's a writ of seizure, Caleb said quietly. They've made it legal. Emma felt anger rise in her chest, hot and sharp. Then I'll face them. They'll take you, Caleb warned. They'll try, Emma replied. She started down the hill. Caleb followed. When they reached the clearing, Garrett turned and smiled. There you are, girl. Time to settle accounts. I owe you nothing, Emma said, her voice steady. Your father owed us, Garrett replied. And debts passed to kin. My father owed you nothing, Emma shot back. You took everything we had and called it legal. You let us starve and called it business. You're thieves with papers. Garrett's smile faded. Careful, girl. She's right, Caleb said, stepping forward. And you've got no claim here. We've got the writ, Garrett said, waving the paper. That says otherwise. Then you've got a problem, Caleb replied. Because I've got a deed. A real one. Registered in the county office. And it says this land and everything on it belongs to me. He looked at Emma. Including anyone I choose to give shelter to. Garrett's face darkened. You can't. I can, Caleb interrupted. And I will. Now get off my land. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Garrett spat into the snow and mounted his horse. This isn't over. Yes, Caleb said quietly. It is. The men rode away. Emma watched them go, her heart pounding. When they were gone, she turned to Caleb. You didn't have to do that. Yes, Caleb said. I did. Spring came slowly that year. Emma stayed. At first, she told herself it was temporary. Just until she figured out what to do next. But as the snow melted and the ground thawed, she found herself staying. She helped Caleb with the traplines. She learned to tan hides and prepare meat. She mended his clothes and cooked meals that tasted like something other than survival. Caleb did not ask her to stay. He did not ask her to leave. He simply let her be. And for the first time since her family died, Emma felt like she belonged somewhere. One evening, as the sun set over the hills, Caleb handed her a small leather pouch. Inside was money. What's this? Emma asked. Your share, Caleb replied. From the furs we sold. You earned it. Emma stared at the money. She had not expected payment. She had not expected anything. I can't take this. You already did the work, Caleb said. So yes, you can. Emma looked at him, this man who had pulled her from death and asked for nothing. Why are you doing this? Caleb was quiet for a long time. Then he said, because you remind me that some things are worth saving. As summer arrived, the cabin no longer felt like shelter. It felt like home. Emma and Caleb worked side by side, not as strangers, but as partners. They spoke more now, sharing stories of the people they had lost and the lives they had lived before. One night, as they sat by the fire, Caleb looked at her and said, "You don't have to stay here, you know. You've got money now. You could go anywhere." Emma met his eyes. "I know. Then why stay?" he asked. She smiled, small but real. "Because I'm not running anymore." Caleb nodded slowly. "Good." The season turned. By autumn, the question was no longer whether Emma would stay, but how long they would pretend they were just two people sharing space rather than something more. One cold October night, Emma finally said what had been building between them for months. "I don't want to leave." Caleb looked at her across the firelight. "Then don't. I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he said simply. "You never were." Emma's throat tightened. "Then what am I?" Caleb stood and crossed the small space between them. "You're the reason this place stopped feeling empty." Winter came again. But this time, Emma did not fear it. They faced the cold together, side by side, in a cabin that had become home. Caleb Moss had pulled Emma Hartwell from the snow expecting nothing in return. What he found was someone worth staying for. And Emma, who had been left to die alone, discovered that survival was not the same as living. Living required someone to face the world with. And she had found that. They had abandoned her to starve during winter. But she survived. And she became something stronger than the cold.